Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping has offered his support to Saudi Arabia in midst of regional uncertainty. President Xi Jinping told Saudi Arabia's King Salman over a phone call that China's determination to deepen strategic cooperation with Saudi Arabia will not waver no matter how the international and regional situation changes. Xi told King Salman, and I quote, "China supports Saudi Arabia's efforts to safeguard national sovereignty and achieve greater development at a time of regional tensions between Saudi Arabia, Iran, Lebanon and Yemen." China has traditionally played little role in West Asia despite its reliance on the region for oil, but it has been trying to raise its profile. With King Salman visiting China in March, China has had to tread a fine line between Riyadh and Tehran as Beijing has close ties with Iran as well. And on this, I'm joined by my colleague Daniele from Newsroom. Daniele, in context of the previous story, we were talking about the relationship between the United States, Russia and China, and the United States saying that, official Chinese journalists working in Washington are part of propaganda and espionage. Now, the story is different here. You have a stronger China very closely interacting with a kingdom or with a country which used to be the closest partner to United States, and despite the fact that they were somehow stood the reciprocal ends when it came to terrorism, how do you see this development?
Well, I wouldn't analyze these news in the context of US and China relation, and I explain you why. China and Saudi Arabia already have very strong economic ties, number one. Number two, China is willing to buy 5% of the Aramco, which is the Saudi company which is dealing with oil with all the oil of the kingdom. They're launching an IPO and China is willing to buy 5% of that. We're talking about an investment worth billions.
I would like to pause for a minute. I'm joined by strategic affairs expert Brahmachalani. At that particular point of time, we were talking about journalists and the action taken by the government of the United States in calling the official journalists as the propaganda activists. But we are on a different story, sir, and I would like to have your view on it. The phone by Xi Jinping and telling him that the Chinese government fully supports Saudi Arabia on issues. How do we see it? Should we see it in the context of the transition, which may well happen next week, as some of the newspapers and websites are claiming in Europe?
Well, there are three things that we need to keep in mind. First, politically, Saudi Arabia and China are mirror images of each other. Both are very repressive dictatorial states. Second, there's a major transition happening in the international energy scene. Because of the shale revolution, the United States has become an oil exporter. It's becoming a gas exporting nation too. And in the long run, this is going to tremendously change the energy picture globally and impact the traditional producers like Saudi Arabia. The third thing is that Saudi Arabia currently seems to be adrift with a very ambitious crown prince in charge who has gone even after fellow family members. And the present regime in Riyadh is seeking to diversify its interests, seeking to put its eggs in different baskets. It's been relying too heavily on the Americans. In that context, the Saudi relationship with China is blossoming, and Saudi Arabia is giving Saudi state-run companies a stake in some of its own state-run companies.